farmers, 3.5 million farmers. How many of them voted to make them representatives? Let's be serious here. We are in touch with the farmers.
You are in touch. They are actually on the farms.
They are not on the farms.
Plus his scathing criticism of John Mahama and his brother as he accuses the brother of exploiting a government fertilizer policy meant for poor farmers.
So he has actually scrounged on the poor farmers to start with. If he was able to do 300 with subsidized fertilizer. His evidence of one single observation of his siblings. And that's typical, isn't it? It's all to do with family.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Gassem Cement, the nation builder. It's also brought to you by Vodafone. Together we can. And the Greek minister, Dr. Kojo Kweku of Free Kotu, has tonight incurred the wrath of a Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana and the General Agric Workers Union after he ripped into them, questioning the basis for their recent warnings of an impending food shortage next year. The two farmer groups had warned the prolonged drought in the last year combined with the shortage in government-subsidized fertilizer has conspired to create a situation where Ghana may face a food security situation next year. Well, the Agric Minister has been responding strongly to that, rejecting all suggestions that this is even a likely remote possibility. We'll come to that shortly. But first, he's been taking on John Mahama again. This time, not only him, but his brother. Remember that John Mahama was recently on his tour of some regions to thank voters who had voted for him in the 2020 elections. And this is what he had said during that tour.
Being a farmer, I see this year there's no fertilizer.
One of my siblings is a farmer, and he told me this year there are no fertilizers, so he had to buy his own fertilizer. And a bag of fertilizer is very expensive now. He normally cultivates 300 acres of maize, but this year he had to reduce it. He couldn't even cultivate 80 acres.
Because planting for food and jobs, it has failed.
And so probably there'll be famine next year because the planting for food and jobs has failed. The Canadian funding has been exhausted and we need to sustain the program with our own money. But there's no money at the finance ministry.
And food crops is going up astronomically.
So that is John Mahama speaking on his thank you tour recently when he had traveled across the country to thank voters who had voted for him in the just ended elections last year. Well, I was speaking to the Agric Minister on this yesterday. I know he had issued a statement last week. Dr. Wusufri Akoto was emphatic that the John Mahama's brother, who John Mahama himself references there in that address on his tour, was exploiting a government policy that was meant for poor farmers, which he didn't qualify for. He says that was unethical practice. Listen to him.
There is not sufficient natural gas. And they are speculating that because of that, there's fertilizer shortage in the UK, which will mean reduced yields and shortage of food next year. This is the United Kingdom, one of the most developed countries. So if they are facing shortage, and we don't even produce a bag of fertilizer in Ghana, we have to import totally everything that all our requirements. If they, the producers, are facing shortage, is it any wonder that Ghanaian farmers are facing shortage?
So, John Mahama was right then when he said his brother couldn't find fertilizers and as a result has reduced his own production and yield and projecting that next year we might have shortages. He was right, wasn't he?
No, he was totally wrong. First of all, the subsidy is not meant for his brother.
Because his brother is in
commercial farming.
Yeah, but...
No, wait, please. So he's exposing himself. The subsidy is meant for farmers with 2-3 acres, that's all, which is the bulk of smallholders. Not for 300 acres, for goodness sake. So he has actually scrounged on the poor farmers to start with, if he was able to do 300 with subsidized fertilizer. So what I'm saying is that what Mr. Mahama is saying cannot be true. It cannot be. In any case, we are talking about millions and millions of farmers You understand? For him to make that conclusion from one observation, it means that when it comes to statistics, he has absolutely no clue.
But Dr.
That he can make a judgment based on the performance of one farmer.
But Dr. Fuye, to be fair to him, you've said that yes, smallholder farmers had struggled to access fertilizer than they normally would this year.
For the last 4 years, this is the first time.
So it's factual to say, even if he was talking in general terms, that this year the smallholder farmers who form the bulk of the farmers in this country have had a challenge with fertilizers, which will affect.
No, of course. No, look, I mean, nobody can deny that. I will be the first.
So in that context, he was right.
No, but he shouldn't go and talk about his siblings and 300 acres to 80 acres. He shouldn't. It's just like him coming to Parliament when I was a member of Parliament, putting 4 people in the balcony of the Parliament and saying evidence-based, 4 observations. I mean, you don't do that. Although we are talking politics, but Ghanaians are more intelligent than that. That your brother, my sibling, is doing 300 and is done 80, and therefore there will be shortage of food. What kind of logic is that?
But he's not the only one. He's not the only one warning us of this.
No, but he's using his evidence of one single observation of his siblings. And that's typical, isn't it? It's all to do with family. And nothing to do with the poor farmer who is sitting there.
What are you insinuating?
I'm not insinuating anything.
But you agree, away from his brother example.
No, but you brought it, so I want to take him on this.
On his brother example.
Yes.
But
is that how to rule? Is that how to make public policy based on one observation?
But that observation is rooted in the fact of the.
I'm saying that he's not even qualified to benefit from that policy because he's a commercial farmer.
Is that illegal?
No, what is illegal?
So it's not. I mean, so
that is not wrong.
Is it wrong?
You are doing 300 acres. Do you know how many acres? Do you know what kind of revenue you can raise from 300 acres of maize or soya and so on? And the small farmer who is just aching out a living with 2-3 acres, the government is going to help him, and you go and take that food from the mouth of the poor person. And he's proud to make a case out of that and come to the ridiculous conclusion that there will be shortage of food next year.
But there can't be anything wrong with the commercial farmer benefiting from government supplied.
Of course not.
There can't be anything wrong.
No, but I'm saying that we don't have all the money for everybody. That's why we chose strategically that we focus on the smallholder.
It's the government that supplies it. You can't blame him for getting it. Your people gave it to the largeholder farmers.
Very unethical. Something meant for small, like government free education, free food for kids, and then you go from your office and then you take a plate from a student whose parents could not afford it.
But what about?
Is that ethical? No, I'm asking you a question.
But the fundamental question there about the government officials under your ministry who also give it to them, knowing they're not supposed to benefit.
No. Database. And then load them up on their phone or something to be able to do that, to exclude that. And this is what we are doing this year. To improve the system, we want to register all smallholder farmers, and we've started a program where they are on there. They will load the number of bags of fertilizer, value equivalent. They go there, and then they release it, and the transaction is complete.
So that's an admission that there's a loophole.
Of course.
In the system.
That's the point.
That you are responsible for.
No. How would I be responsible for?
You're supposed to make sure there's no loophole.
No. Listen, you make policy. You make policy. People find a way around policy all the time. That's why they are criminals in this world. Otherwise, the law is there, and you are saying they shouldn't break the law, and if they break the law, is the fault of the government? Please, let's be serious.
And that's the Agric Minister there. Let's get into this a bit more. Let's speak to the ranking member on the Agric Committee in Parliament, is Mr. Eric Opoku. Mr. Opoku, thank you for time here on Top Story.
You're most welcome, sir.
So the former president had made this point in reference to his brother. We're now learning from the minister that he was not supposed to benefit in the first place. This was his policy for poor farmers. He doesn't qualify because he's a large-scale farmer. You are on the Agric Committee in Parliament. This is a policy that you know very well. That is the case, is it not?
Actually, the minister has mentioned to us in Parliament that the subsidized fertilizer is meant for small farm holders. He has mentioned this to us in Parliament. But let me indicate that the fertilizer is not for free. They are selling the fertilizers at a subsidized price. So whoever is interested and has the farm will have to walk to the agric officer, pay that half price of the fertilizer before you are able to take the fertilizer. So when the farmer walks to the office to purchase, it is the responsibility of the minister's office to ensure that whoever comes to buy qualifies to buy the product. In any case, if we are talking about the quantity of maize produced in this country, we don't talk about smallholder farmers alone. We talk about both commercial and small-scale farmers. Both of them, their produce is put together to generate the total output for our nation. So on the basis of that, if somebody who was able to farm on 300 or 30 acres, 300 acres, is now doing 80 acres, obviously, it is going to affect total production.
Well,
my brother, the fact is that the minister himself, in August, appeared before us in Parliament to answer questions on the shortage of fertilizers in this country. The minister stated categorically before us that yes, there is that problem before us. And he enumerated a number, in fact, he listed a number of factors that have accounted for the shortage of fertilizers in this country. Why do you apply fertilizer? You apply fertilizer to increase production. So if at some point you are not getting the fertilizer, obviously it is going to affect your production.
But his fundamental point is, and you've just conceded that he's actually said this before Parliament, that this policy is for small, poor holder farmers. His point is, John Mohammed's brother, a rich, large-scale farmer, has an ethical, moral injunction not to take advantage of a policy meant for poor farmers.
No, what I'm saying is that the fertilizer is not for free. Normally, it's a subsidized fertilizer.
Yeah, you make the point. It's not for free, but that's the point he's making. It's not for free. You can buy it, but it's meant for poor farmers, not rich farmers, as he alleges, like John Mohammed's brother. Even if you have the money, because you're a rich, large-scale farmer, he says you don't go and take advantage of something that is meant for the poor.
You know, normally what happens in some parts of this country, especially in the north, is that they have what they call family farms. So you have a whole number of people working on the same farm. So you have, let's say, 300 acres of farm belonging to about 15, 14 people, all from the same family, but under the leadership of one person. In that case, they qualify to purchase that fertilizer. In that case, they qualify.
And do you know if John Mohammed's brother's farm
that is why I'm
is
saying
arranged
that the
such
minister
as...
shouldn't have come out with that conclusion? Because in the first place, it is the responsibility of the ministry to make sure that the fertilizer is released to only qualified persons. So if his officers on the field were not satisfied that the person qualified for it, they wouldn't have given him the fertilizer if indeed he's gone there for the fertilizer. That is the case. Because you are the minister, you have the procedures, and you have to ensure that all the conditions are enforced. Now somebody walks to your office to purchase the fertilizer. You have all your processes, you have all the conditions. The person qualifies, he satisfies every condition. And based upon that, your officers release the fertilizer to the person. Then you can't run to complain that the person does not qualify. Then you didn't do the correct way. You didn't do your work well.
He actually
I'm telling you that, yes, it may be under the leadership of one person, but it may be a farm that belongs to so many people, and therefore, per the condition, they qualified for the fertilizer. So that is the reason why they had the fertilizer previously.
He actually concedes that there are loopholes, and I put it to him that, of course, he's supposed to be there and make sure that those loopholes don't exist. But
no, it's not even about the loopholes. It is his responsibility to ensure effective implementation of all the programs he rolls out. You remember, this is the minister who came to us to say that, yes, fertilizers were being smuggled to neighboring countries. Even though in 2017, the smuggling of fertilizer alone cost this nation over $50 million US dollars. You remember, the matter came up strongly. We had to debate this on Parliament. And the minister gave us the assurance that he was putting in place mechanisms to track these fertilizers. Unfortunately, the program keeps on coming almost every year. And the minister seems to have no answer to it. And so if you are the minister, you are in charge of a program, your duty to ensure that the program is effectively implemented.
Let me ask you
so
very...
if you come out to concede that there are loopholes, then it's blamable.
Let me ask you very quickly. I mean, he talks about the fertilizer challenge. The fertilizer supplies, he says, have now been paid, and that he expects that the shortage that we've experienced in this country should normalize. Is that your briefing as well as the ranking on the committee?
You see, it depends on the time. When they needed the fertilizer, they didn't get it because government had not paid for the previous contracts, and the contractors were not supplying. And the minister himself alluded to this when he came to Parliament to answer questions on this. And the simple issue is that we apply these fertilizers just to increase production. So if today we have difficulty accessing the fertilizer, then obviously production will be affected. But sometimes, my brother, let us also look at what they have told us before. You recall that in the State of the Nation address, the president stated categorically that we have produced maize in excess of our demand, and that this year we are even exporting excess produce of maize to neighboring countries. Look at where we are now. We are in shortage of maize. So where is the maize that they told us we have produced in excess of our demand?
Well, I'm grateful, sir. That is Mr. Eric Opoku. He is the ranking member on the Parliament's Agric Committee. Well, the sector minister was also unhappy with projections that have also been made by farmer groups, particularly the peasant farmers and then the General Agricultural Workers Union. Both groups had said, based on the experience on the ground with their own members, that because of the challenges with the fertilizer and the drought, they're expecting extreme food shortages next year. Well, the minister responds to that. He says that will categorically not happen and questions the basis for their conclusion.
There will be no shortage. And read my lips, there will be no food shortage next year.
That is against what the farmers in the field,
There is not a
smallholder farmers represented by peasant farmers,
No, they are not.
etc.
They are not.
General Agricultural Workers Union.
No, listen.
Who are actually on the daily basis
These two groups of people do not represent farmers. 3.5 million farmers. How many of them voted to make them representatives? Please, let's be serious here. When was the last time all these 3.5 million farmers voted to say these are representatives, like the people of Ghana vote us into Parliament and people stand on behalf of the people of Ghana to speak? So don't say. We are in touch with the farmers. Every district, there's a district director of agriculture. I have over 4,000 extension officers in the field working with the farmers. We collect our data that way. And that is more scientific than a group of people calling themselves representatives of the farmers. And I know you use them quite a lot. Every time you roll them in, what is this? And they speak. And sometimes I sit back and wonder, what is the basis of what they are saying? Oh, we are traveling to Bolgatanga. Oh, we are in November.
But that's not fair to them. The peasant farmers have members, thousands and thousands.
How many thousands? No, I'm saying how many thousands?
You are asking me to take your word over the farmer's word.
No, I'm saying that I am in touch with the farmers more than any other person.
You are in touch. They are actually on the farms.
They are not on the farms. They cannot be on the farms. I'm saying that there are over 3 million farmers. How many of them are represented by this group? They're talking about thousands. I'm talking about millions. And I'm in touch with them. Because in every district, in every village, I have somebody there reporting back to me. And we aggregate all this. You know, we have thousands and thousands of workers, professional people out there working with the farmers, collecting data, feeding us back so we can make policy. Some people, a group of people sit there and they say they are representing farmers. Who are they representing? How many acres do they cover out of the millions of acres that, one has to be very scientific. So these are I call them speculators.
But they definitely have farms themselves.
Well, I'm a big farmer. I don't use my farm to guide policy.
But just as you say that as a minister, a lot of your extension officers report, and eventually
not a lot of them, all of them. We have a system by which we collect statistics. Then we use those statistics to make policy here at this desk.
Yeah.
Okay, so if they are saying they are representing farmers, the data that I have is more representative of what is going on the ground. And I'm asking them, how many farmers do they have? What is the acreage that they have farmers together cultivate? And how representative is that in the general population of what we are talking about? You see, a lot of these things, they say all these things and nobody challenges them. And then you regurgitate and say, oh, these are representative farmers. Let them tell you the method they use to arrive at the fact that there's going to be shortage next year. There will be no shortage. Yes?
So that is the minister there. I want to bring in the farmer groups in question. Edward Carraway is the General Secretary of the Agricultural Workers Union, the General Agricultural Workers Union. Also joining me is the President of the Peasant Farmers Association, Mr. Charles Nyaba. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time here on Top Story. Let me bring you in first, Mr. Carraway. His point is, when you made the point about the expectations next year of food shortages, you don't have the scientific basis for this. He does. Your reaction?
Well, it's unfortunate that we have to look at this important issue from the angle that the minister is coming from. I thought that the minister has a responsibility to explain to Ghanaians and allay fears that are there, but not to question our existence. Our existence is independent of his existence as a minister. The General Agricultural Workers Union is over 60 years in this country, and it's not today that our legitimacy will be questioned. The point about whether or not we have the scientific basis, the data on the ground, the data from the ministry itself, undermines the minister's own hope and projections, because we don't issue out that data. For instance, whatever is on the graphic, and what he himself also came out to say that there's no fertilizer, and that constitutes a policy failure, because it is a simple policy failure. You don't go and enter into contract and you refuse to pay the people. And when you refuse to pay them, our sources, information is that as at the time that the minister came out to say that there was fertilizer shortage, is that those suppliers were grossly underpaid. In fact, they were less than a quarter of what government owed them was paid. And, they are rational beings, so they stopped it. So if they stopped it, and all of us know, why does he introduce the fertilizer usage in the planting for food and jobs? It's because it is very critical to production.
Well, his point is that the points you've just cited, the challenges you've just cited, will not affect the harvest because it's stabilizing, and that he's been speaking to millions of farmers on the ground, and what they tell him is not what you believe will happen next year.
You see, I just want to say that. You see, how does he speak to the millions of the people on the ground? He talks about he's having men and women in every village. That is not also the case. They are not in every village. All of us know how the ministry itself is constrained with extension officers and so on. Nevertheless, we too are also speaking with the extension officers as well.
He asked the question, how many
as well?
He asked the question, how many members do you have in your union?
You see, the minister is setting a certain discourse which is not the right way. Does that mean that no one will know unless you are the minister?
But to the question though,
I'm just making a simple question. The time he was not a minister, any information he turned out about the fortunes of agriculture in this country, did it mean that it was not true? So please, we should not divert the discussion to the reality.
But to the question, he says to challenge his basis, the scientific basis, you must prove that you have enough data, and which revolves around your membership. How many members form the union?
One, I want to make the point that is not the discourse. The discourse is not. Look, when you are going to arrive at a scientific conclusion, you don't need the whole population. You don't need the whole population. So we should not get into that academic
discussion. Stay with me. Your colleague Charles Nyaba with the Peasant Farmers Association is with me. Mr. Nyaba, the same questions the minister raises also about the Peasant Farmers Association. He says you don't represent farmers.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me say good evening to yourself and then my colleague Edward on the line. Let me first of all indicate that we in peasant farmers are not interested in seeing food shortage in the country, because when there is a food shortage, it affects our members who are producers and at the same time consumers. So nobody is interested in Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana to see food shortage or to behave as if we are doom mongers. Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana was formed in 2005 with 55,000 members. Today we are 1,000,000 membership across the 16 regions of the country. That's our membership. But that is not even a bone of contention here, just like Edwin said. There are several factors that determines high crop yields. And you should know that I'm also a researcher. I hold PhD. I know how we conduct data. I know how we do research. You can use sample to generalize. There are several variables that we use to consider that determines high crop yields. One, availability of inputs. Two, rainfall or weather is one of the factors. Three, good agronomic practices by the farmers. If you look at all these factors within the ministry itself, and repeatable institutions like Ghana Meteorological Services have indicated that this year the weather hasn't been good across all the regions.
In fact, I read that evidence of the Met Office data to him. His point is that was a forecast, and that forecast did not materialize.
So that's one. So I'm coming. Two, in terms of input, he himself admitted, and then if you talk to all his representatives he's talking about, they will tell you that this year they've got fertilizer less than half of what they got last year. I am a farmer myself, apart from taking information from my members across the producing areas. I produce myself, and I have pictures. I've shared those pictures and videos with the minister of my own farms and other members' farms, how the farms were looking in August.
How many members exactly?
Pardon?
How many members exactly? So you shared it with him. How many members did you use?
No, I just say sample farms that I took in the various maize-growing communities where we have bumper harvest like Upper East, like Tumu, like Techiman, and all those areas. I say those ones. I took my time to visit those farms and took samples. And in scientific research, sampling is accepted. You understand? So I did all this, and then I also spoke to the farmers. I spoke to agri directors that he's getting the information from. I spoke to extension officers, and all of them indicated that looking at the science, it is not possible for us to get harvest which is higher than what we got last year. That is what they told us. And you should understand that the directors of agri at the district and the regional level are all reporting to the minister. So if they are responsible to ensure that there is increase in crop yields, how do you expect them to go and tell the same minister that the mandate you've given us to execute, we've not been able to meet that?
Very interesting perspectives there. We'll just run out of time on this. Wherever you are tonight, if you're a farmer, I want to hear from you. Charles Nyaba, thank you very much. Edward Caraway, thank you also. If you're a farmer across the country, you're listening to us, share your thoughts. You've heard the minister and you've heard the farmer groups as well. 055-1111-997. News Night starts right now.